I see a car come barreling towards us. And I mean, they are not stopping. And I'm like, Mom, we are gonna get hit. This car is not stopping. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So if you saw the last video, you know that Jeremy and I had packed up and we moved on out to the Midwest and we were working at a children's home. So if you haven't already, make sure you go check out that video. It might help give you a little bit of understanding of exactly what we were doing, and it might make this video make a little bit more sense to you. So we've been at the children's home for about a month and a half, and the holidays are upon us, and it is Christmas time. And at Christmas time, all the kids actually get to go home and be with their families for Christmas over the Christmas school break. Most of the kids live on the East Coast, and so most of the older kids either take a bus home or they fly in a plane home. And the younger kids, who are kind of just too young to do that by themselves, all pile up in one of our 15-passenger vans, and somebody drives them to the East Coast to a location spot, and all the parents come pick them up, and then they go home from there. We just happen to be the lucky ones that we're going to be taking these kids home. And so that's where our story begins, is taking 10 of the kids from the children's home, Jeremy and I piling them up into the van and driving home for Christmas. It's about a 12-hour drive from where we were to where we were taking them on the East Coast. And we were the ones that were going to be taking them because our family was also on the East Coast. So it kind of just made sense for us to take the kids and then drop them all off. And then we were able to go home for Christmas and be with our families as well, which was really exciting for us. And we thought, piece of cake, we'll take kids home and then we'll get to be home for Christmas. And it's basically a free trip jhome. So we were really excited about that. So as we're preparing for this trip, our boss, and if you saw last video, you know we named him Jafar. So Jafar actually had done this trip before in the past. Before we came along, he would be the one that would go drive them out there, and then he would come back. And but because our family was on the East Coast, we were the lucky ones that got to take the kids. So he wanted us to do it the way that he did it in the past. And that was to drive overnight, so that way the kids would sleep while we drove, and it would be very easy on us, and it would be a piece of cake drive because all the kids would be sleeping, right? We know we're in and out of houses, we're doing relief, so we're not in our own house, and we're, working with the kids and all this, so we don't really have a lot of time to change our sleep schedule to drive 12 hours overnight. So we just happened to have to do it the night before. So we ended up staying up the night before, sleeping for a little bit, like 3 hours, and then that night is when we were supposed to be taking the kids. Now let me pause here and back up a little bit. Obviously, we're driving, we're going to be checking the weather, it's winter time, we're coming from the Midwest where it snows a lot, and we're going to the East Coast where, there's a moderate amount of snow. And so we've been checking the weather. It just so happens the biggest blizzard of all time is happening on the East Coast during the night that we are driving. Now, you might say, Kia, why didn't you try to change the day? Why didn't you leave earlier or leave after? Because we had a boss named Jafar. That's why. So we went to him and we said, hey, there's this big blizzard coming. There's a huge snowstorm. It's supposed to be the time that we're driving. It starts at midnight and, it's supposed to snow all that day. We're just now starting to learn how to drive the van. And let me time out again. I actually was not allowed to drive the van. At this point, I had not turned 21 yet. I was still 20. And so I wasn't allowed to actually drive the van until I was 21. And so the whole trip would be basically on Jeremy. He was going to be driving and I would just be his co-pilot that could not drive. So I had never driven the 15-passenger van before, and Jeremy had only driven it a handful of times. And so we tell him this. So we tell him, like, we're not very comfortable driving overnight. And he looks at us and says, sorry, the kids have school that day, so we can't pull them out of school to drive home early. And if we drive any later, they'll miss Christmas with their families. So it just has to be this way. So being young and naive, we just kind of accepted it and we said, okay, we'll pray extra hard and we will make this trip work somehow. And so another thing about Jafar was that he gave us the bare minimum amount of money that he thought it would take us to drive from the Midwest to the East Coast. And I don't know exactly how much that was, but I know it was the bare minimum. And he was cutting corners wherever he could because he knew we'd have to stop and get gas. He knew that we'd have to pay for some tolls, and he knew that we would have to pay for food for the kids on the trip. And so he gave us just the bare minimum amount. And he actually told us that he wanted us to avoid tolls at all costs, which obviously adds on some time, adds on some back roads, things that you don't exactly want to be doing when you're driving through a blizzard. But he was our boss, we were naive, and we said okay. That night, we pick up the kids after sleeping only 3 hours in the past 24 hours. We pick up the kids from the 3 different houses, we load them up, and we have 10 kids in a 15-passenger van with us, and we are on our way. Now, the first couple hours go great. The kids are excited, they're hyped up, they're talking a lot, and that's fine, that's to be expected. They're going home after not seeing their parents for a couple of months, so obviously, you know, they're excited, and we're excited because we're going home. And so around midnight, the snow starts to fall, and we made the decision that we were going to make as little stops as possible, and we were just going to push through. So we were pushing bathroom breaks to only when we stopped for gas or when we stopped to eat, and tried to not go to the bathroom as little as possible. But obviously, there's 12 of us in a van. Somebody is going to have to go to the bathroom at some time, and that's exactly what happened at this time. Now, the kids that we were taking with us, the youngest was 5, and the oldest, I think, was either 14 or 15 at the time. We knew that bathroom breaks were going to happen, and so it came from the back that there was an emergency and they needed to stop now. So we stopped as soon as we could at the closest place we could find, and it was a gas station that was not in the best neighborhood at all. We had no idea where we are. It's about 12:30, 1 o'clock at this point, and we are scared. We don't know what to do. So we make the decision that Jeremy is going to get out with the child that needs to go, and they're going to go, and I'm going to stay in the van with the doors locked and hopefully keep everyone safe. And so he gets out, and it's a gas station that actually has a window with bars over it. They close it all up so you can't even go into it. So that one didn't work. So we asked where the closest gas station was that was open. They had no idea because it was a bad neighborhood, and most of the gas stations in this neighborhood had you pay for your gas this way. We kept driving, and eventually we come across a place that we can see people inside, so we know it's a good place to stop. And we pull up, and it was not a good place for us to be. And at this point, the girl that needed to go, she said she didn't care, she just needed to go, and she was not too scared to go because it was an emergency, she needed to go. And all the people inside look very, very shady, and so we're scared. We're not sure exactly what to do, and so Jeremy takes the oldest boy with him, and the oldest boy, Jeremy, and the girl go into the bathroom, and I stay in the car with all of these kids, all 8 of the other kids, and lock myself in and just pray that they are in and out quick and that everything is safe and that nobody approaches the car. That's exactly what happened. We got lots of looks, obviously, as you can imagine. We're pulling into a gas station at 1 o'clock in the morning with kids, a ton of kids, and it was just not the greatest situation. But we get back on the road. The snow is really starting to stick now, and it has only been snowing for about an hour. And we decide, you know what, there's just no way that we can avoid the tolls. It's going to be the most traveled road because none of these back roads are being traveled at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're completely covered. And so we call our boss in the middle of the night and we say, hey Jafar, we just want to let you know we have to hop onto the tolls. We can't drive this anymore. So at this point, we jump onto the Ohio Turnpike and we are driving and driving and driving. And if you've ever driven at night in the snow, you know how hard it can be to see. The snow looks like you're driving into space and you just can't see anything. So that's basically where we're at this point. Jeremy, who's going on 3 hours of sleep in the last 30 hours, me just sitting there trying to help keep him focused, help keep him energized, whatever I can do, keep him company, keep him awake, and also trying to take care of all of the kids who are in the back. So now at this point, we've been driving for about 6 hours, and we should be there in about 6 more hours, and that is not the case. And so every time that we saw the GPS get later and later and later, we just got more and more discouraged, and obviously we're exhausted. So around daybreak, obviously our spirits are lifted a little bit. We can finally see a little bit further when we're driving, and we think, okay, now that it's not so dark out, we'll be able to see and we'll be able to really get going. So we stopped, we let the kids eat, let the kids take their bathroom breaks, got some gas, and we headed back out onto the road again. Right after we stopped, our windshield wipers had decided to stop working, and you would think, well, hey, you're from the Midwest, wouldn't you have a nice ice scraper in your car, in your van? And you would think we would, but we were driving another house parent's van that normally is at one of the children's home, and so we actually weren't in charge of what was in the van at all, so we just kind of assumed that they would have one, and they did not. They had cleaned everything out, so that way we would have the most amount of space for all the luggage and all the kids and everything that we would need, and there was no ice scraper in the car. So we just so happened to have a 1990s Adventures in Odyssey cassette tape box that looked also like a VHS box case, and that is how we scraped the window. Now obviously the windshield wiper is going, but it's just not clearing the window on the driver's side, so Jeremy cannot see at this point. So we pull over a couple times, we try to fix it, and then you can't fix it, and there's nowhere to stop on the turnpikes, and so we just have to keep going. And so every so often we'll pull over to the side of the road, pull out our cassette tape box and scrape off the window and jump back on and hope that it lasts for enough time for us to really get going. So then, obviously the kids are awake, they're starting to get anxious because we're seeing accident after accident, people are spinning and we're just driving straight through a blizzard. And so obviously there's going to be accidents, there's going to be sliding of the van, and there's going to be cars sliding out, and that's exactly what happened. So some of the kids are starting to get really anxious, and we were getting anxious. So we decided to pull over, take a little break, and talk to Jafar and ask him what he thought we should do, if we should wait it out. What should we do? And he gave us the option to get a hotel, but the more we talked about that, it just was not going to work. These kids needed supervision, and there was 2 adults and there were 10 kids, and there was just no way we would be able to find a room for all of us, or find a room, because there was 2 girls and 8 boys, and so there was not going to be any way that Jeremy would be able to watch over 8 boys in a couple of different rooms. And so we just decided it was not going to work. Everyone just kind of wanted to be with their family at this point. Everyone's anxious and tired, and we just want to be home. So we talked to the kids, we talked to Jafar, and we decided that we're just going to keep pushing through. So finally, after driving all day, after dealing with the windshield, after seeing accidents, after being exhausted, after being anxious, we finally make it to the destination where we are supposed to drop off 7 of the kids. The other 3 kids were supposed to drive with us a little bit closer to home, which was about another hour and a half away without a blizzard. And so, but because of the blizzard, those parents of 2 of those kids decided that they just weren't going to risk even driving to where we were going to bring them closer to home. There was no way they were going to make it. And they had family in the area where we were dropping off the first 7 kids. And so they were just going to have that family take them and keep them until the blizzard had calmed down and they were able to figure out a way to go get their kids. So that just left us with 1 kid. Obviously, we were supposed to drop them off at 7 a.m. and it's now about 4 or 4:30, so it's starting to get dark again, but we're excited. Most of the kids are dropped off. We have 1 left, and the one that we had left with us was the 5-year-old. And so after we dropped off all the 9 kids, it was just Jeremy, I, and the 5-year-old boy, and we decided that we were just going to push through. We weren't going to make any more stops. So while we were stopped, we decided to get a bite to eat, get gas, and go to the bathroom. So that way we'd be all set to go for the rest of the ride home. So we really limited how much he was able to drink because we knew we were going to still have quite a bit of a drive left. So we're driving about 10-15 minutes after we had just stopped, dropped off the kids, and I think this is where the anxiety really started to catch up with the 5-year-old boy. And he had done great up until this point, and he still did great. He was just being a 5-year-old boy, and he told us that he needed to go to the bathroom and that it was an emergency and we had to stop. We knew we couldn't stop. There was nowhere for us really to pull off, and so we asked him if he could hold it till we got to the next rest stop, and he said he could. And so we were like, great, we'll keep going. Well, then a few minutes later, he tells us that there was an accident and that he went to the bathroom. We don't have any other clothes for him, and so at this point, we have no option but to get off, buy him some new pants, some new underwear, and hopefully we can find some place that's open in the blizzard and get him changed and get him fresh and be back on our way. So we pull off and we find a place where we can just grab a cheap pair of underwear and a cheap pair of pants, and we get back on the road. Not even kidding, 10 minutes down the road, he tells us he has to go again and it's an emergency. And we did not buy any extra clothes. We bought only what we needed. And so we thought, okay, we have no option but to hop out here. Obviously, we're feeling a little frustrated. We're exhausted and we just want to be home. And we don't know why he's going to the bathroom so much because he hasn't been drinking. And so we're just exhausted. And so we decided just to pull off on the side of the road and let him go right there on the side of the road. So Jeremy hops out and runs around and gets him out, lets him go to the bathroom, gets him back in, and we get on our way. Now at this point, there has forever, in the past 9 years, we have been trying to figure out exactly how far we drove because obviously we're exhausted, we're kind of delusional at this point, and we just were not thinking straight. Jeremy seemed to think we'd only been driving a few minutes. I thought it was a good handful of miles, But we didn't really know, and Jeremy reaches down and he realizes he does not have his phone. And that was our GPS, that was how we were talking to our boss, and that was how we were also talking to the 5-year-old boy's mom to let him know when we were going to be there. And he realizes he does not have his phone. So we pull over to the side of the road, and obviously panic is set in. You lose your phone, that panic kind of sets in, and obviously imagine being exhausted, imagine driving through a blizzard, imagine dropping off 9 kids, still having one more that's having bladder issues now, and there's no phone. And so we decide to take a minute, look in the van, we figure it's got to be there somewhere, and Jeremy remembers that it was sitting on his lap, and when he hopped out of the van, it must have just fallen into the snow. He didn't hear it because it fell into the snow, and he lost his phone in the snow. So at this point, this is where the story gets a little crazy. Just keep in mind how clearly tired we were. We had 3 hours of sleep in the past 48 hours. We had driven through a blizzard and all the things that had happened, scraping off our windshield with a cassette tape box and dropping off the kids and having bathroom breaks, and everything that has happened has made us completely delusional. We are not in our right minds at all, and we are not thinking straight. We've needed to pull off to the side of the road, but by this point, we were past even thinking straight about that. So Jeremy and I look at each other and we're talking about what we need to do, and he knows he has to go back to get his phone. And that's the way that we have all the parents' phone numbers and everything. I had a phone that we could get in contact with our boss and use the GPS, but obviously we're not thinking straight. And I don't have the parents' phone numbers in my phone like he does. And so he says, you know what? It's not that far back. We've only been driving for about a minute. I'm going to drive back. I'm just going to back up and we'll just take it slow. And me, I have a little bit of sense to say, no, we can't do that. We can't back up on the turnpike in a blizzard. There's about 1 lane of traffic, and the 1 lane is not even a lane at this point. It just kind of is like what has happened because of the blizzard. And so people just kind of made a path, but it's not even like a full lane that's open. And so I know that there's no way that we're going to be able to back up. And so I say, no, we can't back up. You're going to just have to turn around. Now to me, that means let's drive up to the next exit, get off, turn around. Then on that side, we'll get off, turn around, and come back and we'll find your phone. Obviously, to him, that's not what he thought. And after driving, being the only driver for the past almost 24 hours, and completely exhausted, completely just mentally drained from trying to stay focused so much, he actually turns the van around on the turnpike. And obviously that is not okay, and do not ever try to do this. And we turn around and we're driving, and I'm thinking to myself, something's not right. This is not okay. And so I look at him and I'm like, Jeremy, we can't do this. What are we doing? You cannot drive the opposite way on the turnpike. So he's like, oh, yeah, of course, you're right. We cannot do this. You know, obviously, like, we have a little bit of mental capacity to know that we cannot drive on the opposite side of the road on the turnpike going into traffic. But just keep in mind, we're delusional, okay? And so he finally stops and he's like, I just have to run back then. I know it's not that far. I'll just run back. And so in my mind, I'm not sure at this point how far it was, but I take his word for it. He says he's going to run back. He's going to run back. So he has boots, snow boots in the trunk. So he goes and he tightens them. And I'm fine at this point. I'm completely fine with this decision. And I think this is a great decision to be running into traffic in a blizzard on the turnpike on the side of the road. That to me makes complete sense at this moment. And so I tell him I love him. I tell him to be safe. And he starts running, and he's running and running. And about 30 seconds into him running, I realize I can't see him anymore. It's a complete whiteout blizzard. And that's when my heart sinks and all of reality comes crashing back. And I think, what are we doing? Now I have no way to get in contact with him. Obviously, we've been seeing cars slide off the road all day. If a car slides off and hits him, I'm never going to know because he doesn't have a phone. Nobody knows that I'm up here. Nobody knows why he's running down the road. There's just no way for me to know if he's okay. And like, how long do I sit here and wait? On top of this, I am not allowed to drive the van. So now I've been left alone, sitting facing into traffic with a 5-year-old boy, a van I can't drive, and the person who can drive has just run down in a blizzard on the opposite side of the road and is just running full speed to find a cell phone. And I am just, at this point, I lose my mind. I am so scared. I don't know what to do. So the only thing I can think to do is to call my mom. So Jeremy is gone. I cannot see him anywhere. And all I see is cars coming at me and coming at me and coming at me. And I'm just thinking, please, please, please do not let one of these cars hit us, because I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm also thinking, please, please, please let Jeremy just turn around and realize this is not a rational decision at all and he needs to come back. So I call my mom and I am crying at this point. I am just bawling and I'm trying to explain to her what's happening. And obviously my mom has gotten some sleep, and so she has not driven in a blizzard, and so she is in her right mind. So this is terrifying to her, and she is trying to understand what I'm saying because I'm just babbling and trying to get it out in all of hysteria. And finally she's like, okay, Kia, we can't do anything. All we can do is pray. I don't know how long he had been gone. I still to this day don't know. It obviously felt like forever to me. I just remember thinking, he's not coming, he's not coming. And so my mom is saying, all we can do is pray. And so at that moment, I see a car come barreling towards us. And I mean, they are not stopping. And I'm like, Mom, we are going to get hit. This car is not stopping. And I'm like telling her, and obviously, can you imagine your daughter calling you and telling you that she sees a car that is going to hit you head on in a blizzard and I'm all by myself? Can you imagine how Mom would feel in that situation? Mom, if you're watching, I'm so sorry about all that. But what were we thinking? Anyways, so I'm telling her, this car is going to hit, this car is going to hit. And she's like, please, Lord, please, Lord, please let it not hit them. Please let it not hit them. And in that moment, the car stopped inches away from us. And these two guys get out and they come over to my window and they're like, is everything okay? And I'm like, no, everything is not okay. My husband is running down the road trying to get a cell phone. I'm stuck here. I don't know what to do. And he was the nicest man, and he was like, you have to turn the car around. You are in the middle of the lane. There's only one lane right here, and you are in the middle of it. You have to turn around and get to the side, or one of these semi-trucks is going to just smash you. So obviously that does nothing to calm me down, and that just adds to my excitement and my hysteria even more. And so I look at him, and completely delusional, I tell him, I'm not old enough. And I'm crying to this man while my mom's on the phone, telling him I'm not old enough to drive a car. I'm 20 years old. I am old enough to drive a car. I'm not old enough legally to be driving this children's home van, but I'm old enough to drive a car. I know how to drive a car. I have a license. I can drive a car. Obviously, I'm not even thinking about that in a dire situation. It is okay to get in the driver's seat and to drive the car. So he says, well, either you have to do it or let me in and I'm going to do it. And at that moment, I say, I have no idea who this man is. He is not getting in here with me and this 5-year-old boy while my husband is nowhere to be seen. And so I say, okay, I'll turn it around. And so him and the other guy stopped traffic while I was able to turn the van around. And I don't know who they are to this day. I did not know their names, but I am so thankful that they stopped. He said that they saw Jeremy taken off down the road. They had seen him running and they thought I needed help. And so that's why they had stopped. And so once I got pulled over, they made sure I was okay and they kept on driving. And I am so grateful to those people to this day, because I am sure we would have gotten in a head-on collision had I stayed there. So we turn around and I tell my mom I'm on the side of the road. Finally, I'm actually like in a bank of snow, so I don't know how we're gonna get out. And Jeremy still is not back. And so obviously at this point, the 5-year-old boy is just terrified. He is crying and he is scared because I've been crying and I'm so scared, and my fear is rubbing off on him, and he's already feeling anxious because he's been alone. And so I turn around and I'm trying to console him, and I'm turned around in the seat consoling him, and I'm talking to my mom on the phone, and she says, let's just pray. Let's just pray for everyone to be able to be calm and to think rationally, and that Jeremy will be able to come back. So I'm facing the back of the van and I'm just watching all of the traffic, and I can see that Jeremy is nowhere in sight still. And so I'm just praying and praying and praying, and my mom is praying on the phone, and she's just praying for calm and that everyone would just have clarity and that Jeremy would just come back. And as soon as we say amen, I look up, and out of the back of the van I can see a highway patrol vehicle and Jeremy stepping out of the vehicle. And in that moment, I was just happy. I was just so happy, but obviously I was completely shaken. I know that at this point, everything that we had thought was rational to turn around and to drive and for him to run on the turnpike in a blizzard, in a whiteout blizzard, was all completely crazy. Like, what were we ever thinking? He comes back. I'm just so grateful he's safe. I'm hugging him, I'm kissing him, and I'm just so thankful that he's okay. I'm thankful that we're okay. And somehow we're able to get back into that one lane and we start driving. Jeremy did not end up finding his phone. And so we called Jafar and we let him know, hey, Jeremy lost his phone on the side of the road. But, you know, I have mine, so we'll be fine. We'll make it home. It'll be fine. And so he actually told us that the boy's mom was not actually going to be coming to pick him up that night because she just couldn't make it out in the blizzard. And that's completely understandable because we were barely making it in a big van. And so he was actually just going to stay at my parents' house with us that night. And so we drove home, and finally, a full 26 hours later, we finally made it back home. And that moment of such relief was overwhelming because of everything that we had just gone through. And so we were finally just so thankful to be home. And it was an extra little blessing because we got to keep the boy with us for that night, and my parents got to meet him, and my brothers got to meet him and just have fun with him. And then we had a fun day sledding, and before his mom was finally able to come get him. And so we ended up having a special fun day with him. But obviously at that point we were exhausted and we needed a couple of days to recoup from that. And actually it took us a couple years. And still to this day, if it starts to snow and we're away from our home, we drive home immediately and we make sure we hunker down for even the lightest little dusting, which I know sounds extreme, but it definitely changed our lives. That scary time definitely changed our lives. And so we were just so thankful to be safe. And obviously now we have a crazy story to tell about how Jeremy ran down the Pennsylvania Turnpike straight into traffic. So thanks so much for watching. If you guys like it, please give it a thumbs up. Also, tell me about your craziest stories. Tell me about your crazy driving experiences, about if you've driven in a blizzard, if you've driven in the snow, anything like that. I'd love to hear it. Please leave it down in the comments below so I can read it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.